Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about the books that I have read in the month of June. It's already the 1st of July, so the month of June just flew by. I didn't even notice it, and I can say that because I read only 8 books and it's not much for me. I think it will be the lowest book count that I read this year so far, but nonetheless I have read quite good books and I want to show you all of them. So the first one is Morgengry by Sara Jo. The original title of this one, because I have a Norwegian edition, the original title of this one is Morning Glory, and in this one we have a woman who had an unimaginable loss, and she just doesn't want to be in the city where she lived, and she doesn't want to be in the job that she had, and she just wants to change everything around her. So she decides to live on a boat, in a boat street, and that boat street, it's a lot of boats where people live in, and that's why it's called the boat street. When she goes there, she finds a box with a diary, we can say, and it is a story of two women, our main character Ada, and then we have Penny, who mysteriously disappeared in 1959, and now she's intrigued. She wants to find out what happened to Penny, and in the end those lives of those two women will connect somehow, but I just don't want to spoil you, so I won't tell you more about it. But yes, we have two perspectives. We have a perspective of Ada and we have a perspective of Penny, and it was a very heartwarming book. It was sad at points and it was funny at points, and I really liked reading from both of those perspectives. I was rooting for the both women. They both went through a lot in their lives, and it was a page turner to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this one. And the only thing that kept me from giving this book 5 stars was that there was a little bit of talk about faith, about Christianity, and it's okay. I don't mind that much talk about Christianity. Some people like it. I'm not the hugest fan of that, so that is the only thing why I didn't give 5 stars to this book. For me it got a high 4 stars. I think from now on Sara Jo will be one of my auto-buy authors. I would like to read all of her books that she already has, and actually I have read another one by her, but I will talk about that a little bit later. Then I have read a arc that I've got on NetGalley. It is That Night in the Library by Eva Jurczyk, and in that book we have a bunch of privileged students who think that they are the smartest, they are the best of them all, and it's their last day before they graduate from that university where they're studying, and they decide to do a ritual in a secret, almost forbidden library in their university, in the dungeons of that library. But some things happened and those students start to die, and the rest of those who are still alive want to find out what is happening. Sounds interesting. That's why I chose to read that book. I was intrigued that it was happening in the library. We have books, of course, and it sounded very mysterious and spooky almost, but to be honest, that book was such a bizarre read. I gave that one 1 star. If it wasn't an arc that I had to give a review, I would just DNF in the first few pages, I think. None of those characters were likable. They didn't have any redeeming qualities, any of them. They were you could see that they are all white privileged people, and the mystery itself was so bizarre. There was happening so much in that dungeon. The way they acted towards each other were just questionable, to say the least, and if they were that smart as they are portrayed, I don't think that they would acted like they acted actually. And it was just a, I think, almost the slasher. There was blood all over the place, and it was just used for the shock factor, and that shock factor wasn't the greatest as well. So I was very glad when I finally finished reading that book, and I'm so glad that now I can just forget about it and move on with my life. And then I read the book The Keeper of Stories by Sally Page. I already returned that book back to my work. I also had an arc of that, and it was okay-ish. I gave that one 3 stars. And in that book we have Janice. She is a cleaner. She cleans rich people houses, and she's a quiet one. She has a hobby to collect stories from the people she's cleaning for, and one day she starts cleaning for Mrs. B, and that lady is a tough one. She has a lot to tell to Janice, but of course in return she wants to know the secret of Janice herself, and Janice says that she doesn't have anything to tell, that she is a boring one. But Mrs. B sees that it's not a true story. Actually, Janice is keeping some secrets, and she wants to find out those secrets as well. So we have that in this book, and it was very forgettable read almost. It wasn't there was nothing special about that book, unfortunately. It was interesting to read while I read it, and there's not much to tell you about. I could see those secrets from a mile away. Actually, I guess what will happen, I guess the ending of that book. There was nothing mysterious about this book. There was nothing that thrilling about it. It was just a story about a bunch of people, and it was written in a quite good way. Like I said, I still finished that book, but it won't be the one that I will remember and I will recommend to other people. To be honest, I already forgot half of the stories that were told in that book, so that's why I can't tell you much about it. Then I read this one. It is also a Norwegian edition. It's called Bursdagsgaven by Simon Kid, and the original title of this one is The Invention of Wings. And in this one we have also 2 perspectives. One is from a slave owner daughter, Sarah, and also we have Hetty Handful. Hetty Handful is a slave girl, and how they meet. One day on the 7th birthday of Sarah, Hetty is a gift to that girl, and Sarah, being that young, she already knows that it's not appropriate, it's not right, it's an absolutely ridiculous thing that you can give other people like gifts, and she's against all the slavery thing from the very young age, and she declines that gift. And there's a point where the story begins, and now we can see how those girls grow up. We can see the relationship between those girls, and we can see the relationship with other people those girls have. And it was an important read, but I can't say that it was interesting read. It has a very high rating on Goodreads, this book, and I can see why it has a high rating. However, I almost had to force myself to pick this book up and to finish it. The story itself is fine, it's interesting, but I wasn't a fan of the writing. I'm guessing maybe that's why it was just too boring for me. I was expecting a little bit more. I was expecting a little bit more from the Hetty side, the slave girl. I was also expecting a little bit more from Sarah. And the ending of the book, it was very abrupt. It happened very quickly, and all this book was building up to that point of the ending, and all this took just to prepare for that event that happened in the end. And that event took maybe 2 paragraphs of the last few pages. So I think everything happened too easily. I don't believe that it happened in reality that easily. Everything just wrapped up very nicely, and it's just, I think it's unrealistic that it was the way it happened in real life. I'm just trying not to spoil you, but in the end I gave this one 3 stars. Like I said, it's important read. I'm happy that I finally read this book. Then I read this brick. It is a memoir biography of Crown Prince of Norway, Prince Haakon, and it was my favorite book of the month. Easy 5 stars. I was flying through this book. It was very interesting to read about him, about his family, to be a little bit in his head, to see how he thinks and how he comes up with his ideas. And he is a very interesting person, and I'm very glad that I bought this book and read it. Like I said, it was my favorite. There's a lot of interesting photos from his work life and from his personal life as well. So yeah, if you a Norwegian, because I'm doubting that it will be released in other languages, however, if you're Norwegian, you should read it. I'm not a Norwegian, I'm from Lithuania, I just live in Norway. However, still it was very, very interesting for me to know the royal family a little bit more. So very happy with this one. Then I decided to read a little bit lighter book. This time it is a children's story. I also have a Norwegian edition. It is by Catherine Fisher, the Oppdrag Bare Kråka. And the original, I can't talk today. The original title of this one is The Clockwork Crow, and in this one we have a orphan girl, Seren, and she gets an invitation, or you can say she's adopted by her, I think it is her maybe godfather or something like that. She never met him, she doesn't know anything about that family. She just knows that she will now have a place to live, and she hopes that it will be the place full of love and she finally will have a new family. She's a very smart, very curious girl. She's very she's interested in everything around her. She has a lot of questions, and she expects that everyone around her can answer those questions that she has. And she's just over the moon that she will have now a family that will love her. However, when she reaches that house where she should live, it seems very mysterious and very cold. No one meets her except that the housekeeper. None of the family members are around, so she doesn't understand what's happening, and she almost feels unwelcome in that house. And suddenly she starts hearing some strange noises in the attic, in the room that is locked, and she, like I said, because she's a very curious girl, she starts asking a lot of questions. And also on the way to that house, she meets a strange man who gives her a strange packet to just keep it safe. So yeah, there's a lot of mysteries, a lot of fun adventures. It's a very short book, it's a children's book, so I read it I think in one sitting, and it was very interesting. It was a page turner. I loved the story, I liked the main girl, I liked how adventurous she was, how she sees the life was just fantastic to see. So in the end I gave it 4 stars. Then I read a total opposite of the book that I showed you before. It is a This is Tevitnene by Svetlana Alexievich, and is The Last Witnesses. I think it would sound in English. I don't know the title in English actually. I just guessing. But in this book we have stories from the kids that survived the Second World War, and the author just found those kids and just collect the memories of those kids. And it was gruesome book. It's very serious topic, especially what's happening in the world at the moment. Everyone should read this book, even though you can be triggered, you can lose your sleep, you can cry, you can be mad at the world. However, I think everyone should read at least few of those stories just to understand what people are going through when the war is happening, and to see the war through kids' eyes is even more devastating. So this book destroyed me, destroyed my mental health. I was spiraling whilst I was reading this book. However, I finished it. I gave this one, it's a little bit strange to give a rating on people's stories, but I gave it 3 stars only because of the writing style, the way those stories were written, not the stories itself, not the kids itself, but the way it was written. That's what I'm trying to say. And the last book for this month was by Sarah Jo. Like I said, she will be my auto-buy author, I think, from now, because I gave this book 5 stars as well. It is Godnatt June, and the original title of this book is Goodnight June. And there we have a girl, June, who is a career-driven woman. She sleeps, walks, thinks, breathes, her career, her job, and she reaches the point where she starts feeling anxious almost. She has problems with her heart, with her health, and only because of her stress levels because of work. And the doctors asks her to just take it a little bit easier, to be easy on herself. However, she is not the one who would listen the doctor because she knows everything better. She knows herself better, at least she thinks that way. But one day she gets a letter that her aunt is dead, and she now gets her aunt's bookstore. And she of course, from at first she decides that she will sell that bookstore. She already has a job, she gets a lot of money from that job, so she just wants to go to that city to just prepare the bookstore for selling and leave it at that. But when she goes to that bookstore, she finds few letters from her aunt to her aunt's best friend. And she starts reading those letters. She sees the communication between those two women, and slowly but surely she starts to understand that she's not happy with the life she's living at the moment, that there is much more around her, not only work, and that work doesn't give her happiness. She meets a lot of new people. She starts developing a lot of new relationships, and finally she decides that she wants to save that bookstore, and the community around her wants to help her. And yeah, we will see if she will be able to save that bookstore or not. And I loved this book. It was so wholesome. I was almost crying at some parts of the book. Of course it was happy, but at the same time a little bit sad at some parts, and that's just the way the actual life is. Not everything is perfect, and not everything is bad. We have some things in between, and those books that Sarah Jo writes are very realistic. A lot of women go through same shit our main character June went through. So I'm just very happy that I finally, after all those years that I have those books by Sarah Jo, finally decided to give this author a chance, and now I found my new favorite author, and I'm very, very, very happy about that. So here are the books that I read in June. It was a good reading month. However, in the end of the month I've got into once again in a reading slump, so I haven't read almost a single page in the last few days of June, so I'm crossing all my fingers that from today I will be reading a lot, because I now have a vacation, 3 weeks of vacation, so there will be a lot of time for reading, and I'm already want to pick up my next book. So yeah, that's the small update about my reading, but that will be it, I think, for now. And thanks for watching, thanks for sticking around. Subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment if you like, and we will see each other in my next one. Bye!